Welcome to Martini Time. Look, I found another martini glass. My son had put it aside, and I had forgotten about it. And there we are. So I named this talk The Grateful Dead. You know, remember the Grateful Dead? And why were they grateful? I mean, a lot of their symbolism and their logos and everything had death in it, you know. But they were dancing. So what is this dancing on death mythology? Look at the holidays, particularly in South America, about death, and in Europe, you know. Halloween is our dancing on death. The skeletons come out, the skulls come out, the dead walk, and we love the zombie movies and the Walking Dead. Oh, we really like death. So here's to the Grateful Dead. Okay, so let's look into it. Let's explore it a little bit. So, I even found, I've got two my artifacts here. You can see my artifacts. I collect all my little statues and things that happen. So it's kind of like my little, this whole thing here is a huge ohm. Not an ohm, a yin-yang. The background here is a big yin-yang. It's very beautiful. And I found it in the upstairs of a furniture store for nobody bought it. It was like a statue of a god that was in a thrift shop as a doorstop. Nobody knows what it is. You know. Oh boy, did I take that home! You see. So a lot of times, anyway, I symbolic things happen, and I collect them and save them, and add them to my little artifacts. For instance, this is a skull, a cat skull. See, and it was left on my doorstep, my back doorstep. Nice and clean like that. Some animal, some god, some threshold guardian, some leprechaun, some fairy, some troll, or whatever you want to call it, left it there for me. And so, you know, I collect these things. And this too, a friend of mine gave me this ostrich egg. Isn't that neat? This too is a symbol of death. Rebirth, but what was in here died, you see. So death is, you know, kind of like this, you know, life and death. When you have death, there's rebirth. When you have birth, there's death. They seem to go together. And so this dancing on death, the celebration, drinking from a skull. You know, a lot of the horror movies, you know, the drinking from, go to Apocalypse Now. And you see Marlon Brando playing Kurtz, and his head's like a skull in the night, in the dark, you see. Their heads and skulls all around. And then when you go to the teachings of the Eastern gurus, Eastern masters, they all tell the disciple, go sit in the cremation ground and meditate on your mortality. And all in the mythology, all in the journeys of the hero. The hero has to go to death for wisdom. The hero has to go into the underworld. All of the great mythic epics, the hero, including Jesus, Dante's Inferno, all of the great epics, East and West, the hero has to go into the underworld and come back with a boon. Death has given him a boon. Death has given him life. But only the hero will go into death in order to get life. But we think these are all mythologies and stories and religions and it's all out there. What does it have to do with me here in Blackstone? What does it have to do with you in your little town, in your little house, in your little life, in your everyday American average life? What are these great mythic themes and symbolism and metaphors stories, parables. What does that have to do with us, you see? We're so separated from it. We don't see the application of these mythic stories, these cosmic battles, these cosmic mythologies and archetypes and all of this stuff, that we really, see in the movies and read about and celebrate, but we have they're all out there. What does it have to do when my uncle dies? What does it have to do when my uncle dies? And the grief. What does it have to do with that? You see, how can I find wisdom in that? How can I find wisdom in a family member's death? How can I find wisdom in my own death? The contemplation of my own mortality. What's the wisdom in that? What's the sense in that, you see? So it's kind of like we're repulsed from that. I don't want to do with that, you see. Somebody dies, they're painted up and put in the box, and they look better than they were when they were alive. And so death didn't really happen. You see. Close the box. So my uncle died 4 years ago, and the reason I'm bringing him back up because a friend of mine was here last night, and he was walking through the room. That was his bedroom. He died 4 years ago. Here, I'll show you a picture. Now here he is. See, I inherited all of his shirts and his martini glasses. So he was the martini priest, and he ordained me as a martini priest. So I'm an ordained martini priest. So don't anybody question my order. Of course, he was the founder of the order, and I'm carrying on the tradition, the order, and I am ordained. So don't question that and think I don't have any. I'm just a fake here. I'm a true martini priest. But anyway, so he died 4 years ago, and he was kind of like a surrogate father for me, in the sense that he gave me as a surrogate. He was old enough to be my father, if that, So, and he was my mother's brother, But what I mean by a surrogate father is that the father's role, his function in life, is as a threshold guardian, the one who guides the initiate into a new world. So the biological father's role is to introduce and guide the child from childhood, and the mother and the childhood's mind and the mythology of the child, the stories and the Santa Claus and all of that. And they go through a passage of adolescence, a transitional period, very vulnerable, very shaky. And then they go into the adult world, the exterior world of forms, society, and your destiny. And the father's role is to introduce and guide this initiate into this new world. And all of the ancient cultures have very powerful rites of passage that are quite violent and sudden. Chop, chop. Immediately the child is snatched from the mother and gone through a horrible transitional rite where he dies, where the child dies, and the adult member of the tribe is born. Immediately. No adolescence. Just bam, bam. Chop off the circumcise that, chop off the foreskin, or blood, or tattoo, or hang them up by the skin, or some very painful rite they have to go through. The rite of passage is the pain of death. They have to go through the pain of death, and then they're reborn. And everybody congratulates them, and all the men hug them, and now you're a man. Now you're a member of the tribe, and your consciousness has changed. Your consciousness has changed, you see. Like a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. The caterpillar has no idea what a butterfly is. The child has no idea what an adult is. That's why it's hard to communicate. But anyway, there has to be a passage. There has to be a guardian, a threshold guardian. There has to be, you see, in Hinduism, this is the threshold guardian. All this Ganesh, everywhere you go, there's a statue of Ganesh. This is a threshold guardian. He, the elephant, in the Indian lore, is who you want to get behind if you're going to go through the jungle. The elephant will remove the logs and take you through the jungle. So the elephant, quite naturally, is the threshold guardian who will lead you into the next order of your consciousness, into the next evolutionary stage of your brain even, of your consciousness, of your role in life. Threshold guardian is very important, because if they're not there, we tape loop. If we can't get, like we are driven by evolution to transcend ourselves. That's what human consciousness is all about. Transcending itself, not staying stuck in one place. Transcending, like Russian nesting dolls. Each one transcending the next. From lower order to higher, to lower to higher, to lower to higher. All of them requiring a passage, a death. All of them requiring a death and a guide. Because you can't go from one lower order to another unless you have a model who is in the other order who can direct you and point you the way. They can't tell you what to do, they can point. I am the way, says Jesus. So Jesus is a threshold guardian. Jesus is the threshold God to lead you to the Father, which is the whole. So if you were looking at that in terms of adolescence, you see, then the adolescent, the child, is attached to the mother. There's the bond of the child and the mother. The child and the mother are one. But then the pressure of evolution, growth, calls him forth to a higher order. So he goes through a passage, a death. The child dies. I always think Santa Claus is a little bit of a rite of that. Santa Claus is kind of like, I don't want to digress here, but Santa Claus is a mythic world in which the universe loves you and showers you with gifts under the cosmic tree, the cornucopia of gift. The universe is a loving place. It just gives you things. It all lights up in wonder. And an angel on the top, and oh my God, it's so wonderful. And then, chop chop, Santa's dead. Wake up, it's the real world. It's just a story. You cut him off. You cut him off. So anyway, this idea of death then is a two-faced God. So death is the end of an old and the beginning of a new. But the old reveres the new because it doesn't know what it is. It's the unknown. The old does not know what the new is because it's never been there before. Life is not recycled old. Life is ever new. But if we don't go through death, it becomes recycled old. You see how this? You got to get a visual. You got to get a vision of this. And I can't draw here, but just life is a river flowing this way, and so then you're going to go from one. All right, let's take the rivers. You go through a higher. All right, so you got a dike, a dam. No, not dam. Series of dams. You want to go canals. Canals going along this, and it's got to get up to a higher order. So it's got to go through these series of dikes or series of little dams. Fill in one, it fills up, then it moves up to this, and then it flows up in the higher order. But from this order, you have no idea what it's like up there. So you got to go through this transitional process, you see. So here, if you can't get out, if you can't go up, you see, if it's blocked by fear, the water goes in a circle. This is called karma. Groundhog Day. I feel like I'm just repeating myself. I'm in a tape loop. I keep going around and around. It looks different, but I feel the same. I'm always feeling the same. I'm always feeling the same emotions. I'm always the same old me. I can't get out of me. I can't get out of this caterpillar. Where is my butterfly? I don't know. Can't find it here. Maybe it's here, maybe it's here. I'll keep looking in the circle. But the butterfly's up here. What stops it? Fear of death. Fear of death. Which is the fear of life, you see. If death and life are one, not two. Now, our culture separates them. You see, here you got death and life are one. Put them together. Got some music, right? So it's one. You need them both to make music. Can't have music without life and death. But our culture separates it. Puts the distant here. Here's life. We want to get that, all the good stuff, positive, negative, dark, evil. Get it away. Get away from me. Devil. Get away. Get away. Heaven, Jesus, light, good, here. Bad, bad, bad. Separate them. Have just good. Just heaven on earth, you see. Just the good stuff. No bad, no bad. You see, that's morality. Okay? So morality creates the world into two. So you just want to be good, the righteous. And you're righteous by getting rid of the bad. You're white by getting rid of the black. Or whatever, you see. So anyway, the truth of life is that they're one. So that means that in order to get to the good, you have to go through the death. In order to get to the higher, you have to go through the gate, the barrier. And the barrier is always going to be loss, because you got to lose the old skin. That's why the snake, where's my snake? The snake is a symbol of rebirth because it sheds its skin. It sloths its skin, you see. That's why the snake is a symbol of rebirth and energy. It's also associated with the moon because the moon sheds its skin. The moon sheds its shadow and becomes whole. Then it dies again, goes into the night, comes out, reborn. Death. That's why the moon is always the symbol of the goddess. And the goddess, you see, is life and death because, well, here, Ramakrishna, the famous Indian sage, had a vision of the goddess. She came out of the water, beautiful woman, gave birth to a baby. Oh, how beautiful. Then she ate the baby, turned into an ogre, and goes back into the water, you see. So the carnivorous island in the life of Pi gives during the day, takes away at night. Penelope in the Ulysses, Odysseus, as she keeps away the suitors by knitting during the day and unraveling it at night. All the mythologies have this pair of the giving and the taking. Life gives and it takes. Whatever it gives, it's going to take away. Maybe a little time there, but it's going to take away. You see, that's the balance of life. Life and death are balanced. That's zero is the sum game. So you can't have all life without an equal amount of death. You can't have all death without an equal amount of life, you see. It's sum zero. But our culture separates them. Oh yeah, we just want positive, no negative. And so that gets us into suffering, and that's what Buddha said was the cause of suffering. The separation of the dukkha, the separation of life and death, of the one into two. Now the fact is you have to live in a world where there's two, so you can't just say, oh yeah, I'm not afraid of death and walk out and get hit by a truck. It's not that at all. It's not that at all, see. We have to live in a practical world where there is death and you don't get run over and you avoid it. If we don't avoid death, there'd be no driving. Everybody would run into everybody. Woo-wee. It's death that makes the traffic work. It's the fear of death that makes society work. You ever thought of that? It's the mutual fear of death that makes society work. So that's why when you have a terrorist or a mass shooter who knows he's going to die when he does it, it kind of freaks us out because they're not being controlled by the fear of death. Can't control them. They're out of control. They don't fear death. So maybe that's why the wild riders or the wild ones and the gangsters and the people beyond the pale usually have symbols, skulls. Skulls. They like that. Gangs. Why do they like that? They're outside the pale. They're outside, they don't fear death. They're outside of the pale of civilization. You see. So that, anyway, that's my bell rang. So the Grateful Dead, basically, is a metaphor for dancing with surrender, dancing with death, and letting your life free from the fear of it. So when we let our life go from the fear of loss, we stop clinging to life. And then life can breathe itself as the dance of life and death. And this is called atonement. The one has been restored. Thanks for dropping in.